If you're over 55 and you've noticed that an erection starts but doesn't last, I need you to hear this right now. It's not about medication, it's not about expensive supplements, and it's not about any treatment that puts your heart at risk. There's something that almost no doctor mentions in consultations, something so simple that most men completely ignore it. And it might be in your kitchen right this moment. I'm Dr. Natália Castro, and before I tell you what it is, I need you to understand why your body has changed. Because without that understanding, the solution won't make any sense. There's information that circulates in doctors' offices but rarely reaches the patient. Information that, when men finally understand it, completely changes how they view their own bodies. It's not about lack of desire, it's not about lack of love, it's not even about low testosterone, as many people think. It's about a very specific physical process that starts failing silently, long before you notice the first symptoms. And the most disturbing part is that the more you try to force a response, the more this process deteriorates. You've probably felt this already. That tension before an intimate situation, that uninvited question popping up, will it work today? And do you know what that question does to your body? I'll explain. But first, you need to understand what's happening inside. Think about this. Imagine an old house with plumbing from decades ago. For years, the water flowed with pressure, without interruption, without effort. But over time, the pipes hardened, accumulated deposits, and lost elasticity. The water still arrives, but not with the same force, not with the same readiness. That's exactly what happens in the male body after 60. And the most important plumbing for this specific function involves a molecule that very few people know by name. A molecule that your own body produced easily when you were younger, and that's now being generated in smaller and smaller amounts. When you understand the role of this molecule, you'll understand why so many solutions promise a lot and deliver little. And you'll understand why what I'm going to show you today works in a completely different way. But I'm not going to reveal what it is yet because there's something that needs to be said first, something that most videos completely ignore. In the last 20 years in my practice, I've treated hundreds of men with this same pattern. Intelligent, disciplined men who built careers, raised children, faced difficult situations with their heads held high, and who came to me sitting in silence, looking at the floor, searching for the right words to describe something that embarrassed them more than anything else. Most use the same expression. Doctor, the desire is there, but the body doesn't follow. And when I saw these men, I noticed something very clear. The problem wasn't just physical, it was physical combined with the weight of silence. Because no one teaches men to talk about this. You were taught to solve problems, to endure, to move forward. And when the body fails at something that's always been considered natural, that silence turns into distance. Distance from your partner, distance from yourself. You start avoiding situations, avoiding prolonged caresses, avoiding the environment that could lead to intimacy. Not because you don't desire it, but because you prefer controlled emptiness to the risk of failure. And this avoidance pattern over time becomes more destructive than the original physical problem, because the body responds to what the brain anticipates. And if the brain anticipates failure, the body obeys. This isn't weakness, it's physiology. It's how the nervous system was built, and here's the part that almost no one explains. The more you avoid, the stronger the cycle becomes. The more fear sets in, the more the body closes off the path. You're not alone in this, and more importantly, you're not broken. What's happening has a clear explanation, and that explanation has a solution that doesn't require a prescription or an expensive pharmacy visit. But before we get to it, I need you to understand the real mechanism, because the solution only makes sense when you understand the problem in depth. An erection isn't an act of will. It doesn't depend on how much you want it. It doesn't depend on how much love you feel for your partner. An erection is a hydraulic process. I need you to visualize this clearly. The brain sends a signal. The blood vessels in the penis receive that signal and relax. A large amount of blood enters quickly and is retained in that tissue. That's it. There's no magic, no mystery. It's pressure, flow, and vascular response. The problem starts when this system loses efficiency, and the main culprit has a name: nitric oxide. This molecule is the messenger that gives the order for the vessels to open. Without it, the arteries stay tense, closed, without elasticity. It's like trying to inflate a tire with a clogged valve. Some air gets in, but not enough, and it escapes quickly. That's exactly what many men describe. The erection starts but doesn't reach firmness, or it reaches firmness but doesn't sustain it. With aging, nitric oxide production drops. This is a documented physiological fact. And this decline doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually over years while you haven't even noticed the change yet. At the same time, another factor comes into play that most people completely ignore: the nervous system. When there's fear, anxiety, that silent pressure that it needs to work, the body releases adrenaline, and adrenaline closes blood vessels. It's a primitive survival mechanism. The body doesn't differentiate between a predator and an anxious thought. For it, both are threats, and in the face of threats, it shuts down the flow. So after 60, you have this combination: less nitric oxide, less elastic vessels, and a nervous system in a permanent state of alert. And now tell me, do the blue pills solve this? No. They force blood, increase pressure, make the heart work beyond its limit to push circulation through vessels that aren't ready to receive it. That's why so many men feel palpitations, headaches, that strange sensation in the chest after taking them. The body is saying it's being forced beyond what it can handle. And over time, the dose that worked before stops working. The body adapts, dependency increases, confidence decreases. Forcing isn't repairing, pushing isn't healing. The real solution is in teaching the body to open the path on its own, supporting natural signaling, not replacing it. And that's exactly where what I'm going to reveal comes in. But first, comment below where you're watching this video from, because I get messages from men all over Brazil and from many places outside too, all going through the same situation in silence. Knowing where you're from helps me create more specific content with the right examples for your reality. Now, let me tell you about something that happened in my office a few years ago and changed how I view this problem. I started noticing a pattern in some patients who weren't following aggressive treatments but showed consistent improvements in nocturnal vascular response. They weren't spectacular improvements, not the kind you notice overnight. They were gradual, silent, but stable changes. When I investigated habits, schedules, nighttime routines, one common element always appeared: something none of them had received as a prescription, something that was in their daily lives without any therapeutic intention. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Then it happened again and again until I stopped ignoring it. The interesting thing about this element is that it doesn't act during the day when the body is in vigilance mode. When stress dominates, when circulation is divided among 1,000 simultaneous demands, the effect appears at night. When the nervous system slows down, when the vessels start to relax, when the body enters what I call repair mode. It's in that state that this natural signal finds the perfect environment to act. Because the night has a role that almost no one considers when talking about male function. During the day, your body is in survival mode. The heart races, muscles demand blood, the brain processes stimuli. It's not the ideal time to ask for vascular repair. That happens while you sleep. Heart rate drops, vessels expand. The parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for recovery, takes control. And it's at that moment that the body does something most men don't know happens. Nocturnal erections aren't sexual, they're physiological. They're the way erectile tissue stays oxygenated and healthy. When this process is working well, the vascular health of the penis is maintained. When it's compromised, the decline is progressive. What I'm about to tell you has the ability to support exactly this nocturnal process, not to force an immediate response, but to prepare the ground so the body does what it already knows how to do, just more efficiently. Do you want to know what it is? I'm getting there, but first I need to tell you about a patient. I'll call him Roberto. Roberto was 64 when he came to the office. He wasn't nervous, he was exhausted. Exhausted from trying, from waiting, from being disappointed. He'd tried the famous blue pills. He'd bought supplements with huge promises. He'd read all kinds of home remedies on the internet. Some things worked once, others not at all, but they all had one thing in common. The sensation he described with a single word: pressure. The pressure that it needed to work, the pressure not to disappoint, the pressure to prove to himself that he was still capable. When I examined Roberto, his heart was fine. The test didn't show anything serious. The problem was circulatory and nervous, exactly the pattern you now understand. I didn't propose any medication. I asked him to do one simple thing: a nighttime ritual, just that, with consistency, without immediate expectations, without pressure for results. Roberto looked at me as if he was expecting me to reveal an elaborate secret. When I explained what it was, he was silent for a few seconds and then said, "Just that?" 30 days later, he came back. He didn't talk about potency. He didn't talk about performance. He talked about sleep. He said he was sleeping better, waking up more rested, that his body felt less tense. And then he said something that stuck in my memory. "Doctor, I stopped being afraid before going to sleep. And when the fear went away, the rest started to appear." That's what happens when you stop fighting your body and start accompanying it. It's not an immediate cure, it's a transition. And it's exactly this kind of change that has the best chance of lasting. It's time to say it clearly. The spice I'm talking about is clove, cravo-da-índia, that small dark clove that most men associate only with cooking or winter tea. What almost no one knows is that from a vascular and urological point of view, clove has very interesting properties that the male body recognizes naturally. Clove is rich in eugenol. This natural compound has been studied for its ability to support circulation, improve blood vessel response, and promote vascular relaxation. It doesn't act like an aggressive stimulant. It doesn't force the body to respond. What it does is create the right conditions for flow to happen on its own. And here's the key that differentiates this approach from everything you've tried before. The male body responds better to gentle, repeated signals than to strong, isolated shocks. That's why clove doesn't work like an immediate effect pill. The effect is progressive, cumulative, respectful of biological rhythms, and therefore more long-lasting. Why doesn't anyone talk about this? The answer is simple: because it's not profitable, it can't be patented, it can't be sold in expensive packaging with high margins. Modern medicine, especially when it comes to male sexual function, has been pushed for decades toward quick and visible solutions, even if those solutions aren't the most suitable for the long term. Clove doesn't fit that narrative. It's too simple, too accessible, too everyday. And yet, when used correctly at the right time, it can support exactly the process you need: better nocturnal circulation, better vascular response, a more solid foundation for what comes naturally afterward. But before I explain how to use it, I need to tell you something important because I see many people with doubts about this, and unanswered doubts cost results. If you want to understand in depth what compromises male health after 60, the silent mistakes most people make without realizing it, and what to do to protect your body consistently, I have prepared a specific medical guide for that. It's called the Medical Guide to Avoiding Mistakes That Damage the Prostate. After 60, and it's available in the pinned comment below this video. It's not a supplement, it's not a physical product, it's clinical information organized simply so you can make the right decisions with your own body. If this topic is important to you, it's well worth checking out. Now, back to the ritual. How you use clove matters as much as the clove itself. And this is where many people go wrong. They use the wrong amount at the wrong time, or change the process every week thinking it'll improve the results. The body needs consistency. It needs clear, repeated signaling to start responding. What you're going to do is simple. Every night when you finish the day's activities, when your body starts entering relaxation mode, you're going to take a single whole clove, not ground, not in a capsule, not mixed with anything, a whole clove just as you find it on the market shelf. Put it in your mouth and start chewing slowly. The goal isn't to swallow immediately. The goal is to allow the natural compounds to release through saliva and come into contact with the mucous membranes. For about 60 seconds, chew calmly, without hurry, without tension. It's normal to feel an intense flavor. It's normal to feel a slight tingling or warming on the tongue. That indicates the compounds are active. After that minute, swallow it with a bit of warm water. Not cold, not hot, and go to sleep normally. That's it. You don't need to repeat it several times a day. You don't need to increase the amount thinking more will be better. You don't need to combine it with other ingredients. The ritual works through consistent nighttime repetition, not excess. The most common mistake I see is exactly this. The man does it for 3 days, doesn't notice anything immediate, and gives up. Or does it irregularly? 1 night yes, 2 nights no. And then says it didn't work. But what he doesn't understand is that the process isn't immediate, it's cumulative. The body needs time to learn that the signaling is real, that it's recurrent, and that it can start responding to it. In the first nights, the most likely thing is that you won't feel anything different in the function itself. What some men notice in the first weeks are more subtle changes. Better sleep quality, a deeper sense of rest, less tension when lying down. These are important signs. They indicate that the nervous system is starting to leave alert mode and enter recovery mode. Over the weeks, when consistency is there, the changes start appearing in other dimensions. The response becomes more stable, firmness holds better, and something few expect. The anxiety decreases. You start to stop monitoring, stop wondering if it'll work. And that's exactly when the body gets the space it needed. But there's something that can sabotage this whole process, even if you follow the ritual to the letter. And this saboteur is silent. It works under the radar. The first is sugar at night, especially sweets, white bread, desserts before bed. When insulin rises, the body's ability to relax and repair drops. The direct result is more inflammation, less available nitric oxide, more rigid vessels. Exactly the opposite of what you're trying to build. The second is nighttime alcohol. Many men believe a glass helps relax in the short term. It might seem true, but internally what happens is different. Alcohol fragments sleep, interferes with the nervous system, and reduces circulation quality during the night. It might help you fall asleep faster, but it harms the deep recovery the body needs. The third enemy is more subtle and more devastating than the first two: the presence of expectation at bedtime. You lie down thinking, it has to work, it has to go right today. And that thought, as innocent as it seems, activates adrenaline. Adrenaline closes vessels and the cycle restarts. That's why during this process, it's essential to shift the focus. Don't seek results, seek presence. Don't ask yourself if it'll work. Allow it to happen. When you remove the demand, the nervous system relaxes. And when the nervous system relaxes, the body finally has the space it needs to do what it's always known how to do. There's something modern medicine tends to ignore because it doesn't fit any formal protocol: the role of the mind not as an obstacle, but as an ally. After one or two difficult episodes, an inner voice appears, a voice that questions, anticipates, protects. That voice isn't weakness, it's a primitive defense mechanism. The problem is that the body doesn't interpret this defense as protection, it interprets it as a threat. And the threat closes the flow. That's why the most important change you can make during these 30 days isn't physical. It's the decision to stop monitoring yourself, stop demanding from yourself, to treat your own body with the same patience you'd have for any other part of your health that needs time to recover. When you do that, something starts to change. Not on the first day, sometimes not even in the first week, but with consistency, it happens. Let me be very honest with you at this point. This ritual isn't a miracle cure. It doesn't replace medical follow-up when there's a real clinical condition that needs attention, and it won't transform everything overnight. What it does is support processes that already exist in your body. It's opening the way for flow to happen more naturally. It's reducing the internal tension that sabotages the response. And when that happens consistently, what usually changes first isn't the function itself. It's the confidence, the feeling of being comfortable in your own body, the tranquility of no longer fearing what might happen. And from there, everything else becomes easier. I want to ask you something, not blind faith, not a belief that this will magically solve everything. Just 30 days of commitment to yourself, 30 days without demanding immediate results, 30 days without judging yourself, 30 days of simple, calm consistency. Because for years, maybe decades, you've experienced intimacy from a place of demand, from the idea that you need to prove something, that you need to meet an expectation, whether your partner's or your own. But the true strength at this stage of life isn't in forcing, it's in understanding, in listening to your own body, in accompanying it instead of fighting it. This 30-day commitment isn't with a nighttime ritual. It's with a new way of relating to your own body, with less fear, more patience, more respect for your process. What usually changes first isn't what you expect to change. It's sleep quality, the feeling of rest upon waking, the absence of that weight before bed. And over time, from that stable base, the body starts responding more naturally, more calmly, closer to what you remember was possible. You're not starting from zero, you're reclaiming something that's always been yours. And clove, used correctly at the right time with the necessary consistency, is one of the simplest and most underestimated tools to support that path. Many men are going through exactly what you're experiencing and doing so in silence, with shame, with the feeling that they're alone in it. If this video brought some clarity, some tranquility, some new perspective on what's happening with your body, don't keep it just for yourself. Share it with someone you feel might need it more than they realize. Sometimes simple information arrives at the right time and changes the course of a situation the person didn't even know had a solution. If this kind of content makes a difference for you, subscribe to the channel because here we talk exactly about what most doctors don't explain in consultations, with clarity without beating around the bush, with respect for your intelligence and your life experience. Write your age in the comments. I read everything. And each message helps me better understand what you need to know.